times for on-demand. Well, until it'll be weekdays from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and nothing on the weekends in the evening.
That is correct. First of all, good evening.
Good evening.
Angeline, Public Works Director. That is correct. And the schedule that is mentioned in the comprehensive operational analysis, I want to point out to the council, it's consistent with the schedule we are currently running. There is no additional changes other than the ones that the council is already aware of.
Okay.
This document just solidifies those changes.
And does that mean we're stuck with this schedule here?
No, absolutely not. What part of the comprehensive operational analysis was to lay out these findings, and then we roll into the short-range transit plan. The short-range transit plan may identify changes that needs to happen additionally to transit, meaning that we could extend service, reduce service, but those kinds of changes would come at a later date if they're recommended and the council so chooses to move forward with those changes.
So, okay, so it looks like though there was a lot of input from community to come up with this.
Yeah, there was an extensive amount of outreach. We have with us tonight in the crowd, Mike Costa from PCTPA, our partners in putting together this plan, and we had several outreach opportunities for everyone to give their input. And based off of what we've got here and how we've been operating, we didn't receive anything that suggested that we're doing anything that the public didn't support.
Okay, so, but there was no additions that people, because I know I reached out and recommended that we try to have some evenings. And I noticed there's nothing on Sunday. There's nothing on Sunday. We don't go down to the confluence. So in the summer, so I don't know, again.
Yeah, so I'm kind of happy to speak to that. So Auburn Transit traditionally has never operated on Sundays. We've reduced the service to the confluence because of the numbers. The numbers just didn't support it. For example, in the year 2021, we transported 29 passengers over the entirety of the year. In year 21-22, we actually jumped up and serviced 108 passengers for that year. But in year 22-23, we dropped back down to 40. And the cost of operational to move that limited amount of passengers certainly didn't weigh out, and it didn't fit with the requirements of TDA of meeting that 10% cost recovery ratio for transit operations.
I certainly understand that. I'm just disappointed that, we can't try and even continue to work, because I think now my input, and I certainly know, others that have had some input have indicated that they would like to see it in the evenings. And Auburn is becoming more bike and pedestrian friendly, so that they want the use of an on-demand bus more. And I think that lends itself to us trying even again, maybe in the summer. I know we're coming into the winter months. And then I did have a suggestion at one time that to help the businesses in Auburn, I think it would be really helpful if we had a run using I think you said it's not cost effective using a large van. I understand that, but if we had a smaller vehicle, then we could have a few runs in the peak of the summer months when there's hundreds of cars that go down to the confluence. I think that would be something that I would look forward to. And so what I hear you saying is that right now we're not changing, we haven't cut back, but we're not adding anything at this point in time. But in the future, maybe by the time summer comes, is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. The success of the Auburn Transit program is staff's priority. So what we're hoping to do is to have the community reach out and demonstrate that need is there. And if that need is there, there's nothing to say that we can't bring these programs back. I mean, we're always evaluating it as we're continuing our operations.
Okay, good.
And also, if I could just reiterate, because I am the city council's representative on PCTPA, there was this extensive outreach. We had a public hearing also before all of these recommendations, including ours and the other transit plans, short-term transit plans came up, and there was no public comment on this particular item that affected Auburn. But I think that this is a plan that we're adopting for a year. The PCTPA has already adopted it. I had mentioned to PCTPA that there might be some concern on this issue, knowing how you felt about this. So they also were made aware of that. But I do think, with all due respect, we I certainly have always been very supportive of transit, and I'm 100% on board with the recommendations that are being presented here today. But I just want to caution us, and I know that I oftentimes hear that we have to spend money to make money, but right now the city is in such straits that I want to say dire, but we are to some extent, that I think we have to be very conscientious in the dollars that we do spend, and ensuring that we are getting people to participate. If we only have people, one or two people ride, on demand is a perfect way for them to get down to the canyon. So, but there might be some opportunities for outreach with some of the other, organizations that, Park and some others, to encourage folks with on demand, to encourage more public transportation down there. So, thank you.
So my input is that, we do have a transit fund. And again, I think it's important that we work toward trying to expand it. People aren't going to, there's just not going to, unless you see and have the opportunity for a trial and people can see that it's out there, I don't think you're going to get that much interest, honestly. I think, again, if you need to round up interest, I mean, I can certainly try and do some of that, but it just, again, when we first started on demand, we didn't have the ridership, and it's grown. So hopefully we can continue to do that because it helps our businesses as well. And so anyway, that's my 2 bits here. And I think you understand that. And I certainly understand that, I've been on the bus and I've seen that there's not a lot of ridership. There's individuals that go back and forth to work, but I think we are coming to, this town is coming to the point where we do have the need for a on-demand transit that goes into the evenings and summer months and is used for recreation. So.
Message received, understood. We will continue our marketing efforts and we will expand the program as is needed.
That would be good.
I had 2 quick things since this got pulled. I'd already talked to our city manager about one of them. As far as the evenings go, I know that when this first started, we were working with the police department and talking about this as a method for those to get a ride home and not to reduce our DUI problems that we have. How are we mitigating those? Because we don't have Uber and Lyft options here. How are we, if that's not an option to use on demand, are we working with the police department to look for other options?
Yeah, we continue to work with the police department in any facet that we need. And that is not to say like on special evenings, like, St. Patty's Day and things like that, we can expand our service and have special rides, right? We can always do those sorts of things. Historically, however, we've handed as much information out to all of our businesses, the bars, and all the things that might be serving alcohol into the evening. And we have received very little patronage from that.
Okay.
So, but we'll continue to market it and hopefully there's a need and it'll grow.
It might be worthwhile trying to do it on like certain evenings that we know are
Oh,
gonna be
absolutely.
a little bit more of a challenge when it comes to DUI, so that would be good. The other piece that I had brought up to the city manager was North Auburn. I'd talked in our 3x3s with the county and county supervisor Gustafson about the fact that there is a demand for that service in North Auburn, and that that the county does not provide the services that we do in that area. And so there was talk about us getting some kind of either payment for serving that, or trying to figure out how to, because us just stopping at the city limits and dropping people off is not something that I feel is an appropriate level of service. And so how is that working with this new plan? Because we were going out into Auburn and helping senior citizens get to the hospital or doctor's appointments, other things like that. Are we still helping the people in North Auburn? And is there a plan to get payment for that, or are we just dropping people off at the city limits with this new plan?
Also, you'll be happy to know a part of this comprehensive operational analysis was done in conjunction with Placer County Transit. They've now expanded their on-demand service into the North Auburn region.
Okay.
So now no passengers are essentially left behind because there's a good meeting point within the center of the city where we serve the southern portion, they serve the northern portion, and we kind of both do the middle. And so we've noticed the numbers have gone up for them and us because we've had that
Great.
cohesive.
So they have the same exact service as we have on their side. They're not doing routes.
No, so Placer County still continues to run their routes, but they have added on demand to their service.
Okay.
And we're using the same kind of app now,
Yeah.
as you know, so to try to make that a smooth transition for.
They just talked about continuity of service for ADA was that they were giving people
yeah.
service all the way. So I was making sure that we weren't just dropping people off and making people wait for another on-demand service to get them another mile.
No.
So what Councilmember Dowden Calvillo is referring to is that we all now serviced by the Go South Placer app. So there's more interaction between the transit agencies to make the ridership more cohesive. If you
So they're coming,
great.
they're going to come into the city and we're going to go out there and we're going to make sure that people have ample opportunity to have that transit. The on-demand model has just really skyrocketed when I talk to other cities with League of Cities, you know, as they are starting to implement that within their regions as well. And it just really is the future.
Yeah, and we saw that demand, but we were just having to pay for a service that was outside the city. So I wanted
Yes,
to make
yeah.
sure we were getting that covered. Okay,
I have
great.
another question.
Yeah, those were my two. Go ahead.
Oh, you just jogged my memory. So we're now servicing the school kids of the Auburn Union.
So I don't want to say that we are servicing the school kids. What I want to say is we're servicing all passengers within Auburn. If a school kid happens to book a ride, we will certainly take them to school as needed. But we don't have a dedicated route to school, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. And so then my question is, are they getting a discount and how is that affecting our,
Yeah, so our ridership and our fares are consistent across the board. We have a senior, youth, and disabled price structure. And if they're a senior, they get that. If they're a youth, they get that. And, you know, we have also our general fees. So
okay, so
in
there's
general,
been-
students are half price,
okay. And there's been no break for them then?
not to this point.
Okay. And do we go well, we have in the city limits, we have Auburnell.
Nope.
No, that's not in the city. So
Sky-
we don't
Sky
take
Ridge and
kids
EV.
to Auburnell then?
We do not. So currently we service EV Kane, Skyridge, and
That's it.
Placer. Yeah.
Placer High School. Okay, thank you.
But if a kid is going from Placer County into EV Kane, how does that work?
Placer County On-Demand Transit also services that area. So
Perfect.
And just as someone that actually, I ride this at least once, twice a week. The app does make it a lot more cohesive so that if, like, I do go into North Auburn for my job, and then if I need to go somewhere else, I'm able to either get my ride either from on demand to work, and then if I'm coming home, I can get my ride from Placer County Transit on their fixed route coming into the main station by the post office. And then I get my, you know, depending on what my schedule is, I get my on-demand ride home. So it's very cohesive, very smooth, very seamless. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a rider. It's great.
Great. Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay, then is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back.
Madam Mayor, I'll move by resolution to approve and accept the comprehensive operational analysis as completed and support the recommendation, the recommended COA service plans implementation.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes,
Sarah Sammons.
Yeah, aye.
Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye. Motion carries. That is the end of the consent calendar. We're moving on to public comment. This is a time provided so that the public may speak to the council on items not on the agenda. Please make your comments brief as possible, not to exceed 3 minutes. The council cannot act on items not included on this agenda. Items may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. If you'd like to come up, anyone? Okay, please do.
Mayor, council members, city staff. My name is Brian Faircloth, a volunteer for United Sovereign Americans Organization. And I spoke, and my colleagues spoke at the last meeting on October 14th. We did not see it listed on the agenda. We asked at that time that you place the resolution on the agenda and support it for a valid 2024 election according to the law. So we come back today to give you some, we trust that you're still contemplating and thinking that you're going to support this. So we came back to provide more information. So to help you in any way that we can about the organization and what we're doing. For folks who are viewing this for the first time, and we didn't you didn't attend the October 14th meeting. Let me just reiterate. An open source audit on the 2022 California general election, there was 5,886,198 ineligible or uncertain registration violations within the California State Voter Roll database. 2,776,939 votes cast by ineligible or uncertain registrants. 123,785 more votes that were counted than were, and nobody knows who cast them. There was 2,776,849 apparent voting violations in excess of the legal standard for an accurate ballot election in California. For the number of people who voted in 2022, that number was 90. Again, we're from United Sovereign Americans. We're volunteers. We're not spokespersons. We hope that you will still consider supporting the resolution that you want a valid 2024 election.
I'm sorry, I missed, what is your full name and address?
Oh, my name is Brian Faircloth.
Bearclaw?
Faircloth.
Oh, Fair, sorry. That's a,
F is in, it's in the record of the last meeting. It's FAIRCLOTH.
and,
And my contact email is there.
but you're a resident.
I'm a resident of Placer County and I live in Roseville, California.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in order to give you a little bit more information, we have
I'm sorry, Brian, your public comment time is up.
I'm just going to announce that my colleague will give you some information on one of the founders of the organization. Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for your time. I'm Rob Dobbins, a Placer County resident. I live in Roseville, California. This is a bio for Harry Howry, United Sovereign Americans Chairman. Harry Howry graduated from Washington University in St. Louis in 1978 with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and in 1979 with a master's in business administration with a systems science subspecialty. During the last 25 years, Mr. Howry has primarily been engaged in the development of workflow automation software and security software working through his own businesses. The primary purpose of such software is information assurance or cybersecurity and high-volume secure workflow automation. In conjunction with his work in this field, Mr. Howry has been employed by U.S. government agencies, banks, financial industry participants, and large industrial companies. These U.S. government agencies include the National Security Agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the Comptroller of the Currency, Naval Reconnaissance Office, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, Special Operations Command, Indo-Pacific Command, Sandia National Laboratories, and many others. The companies and banks who have hired Mr. Howry or the companies he worked for include American Express, Visa, MasterCard, and 16 of the 25 largest U.S. banks. Mr. Howry consulted extensively in St. Louis County, Missouri, helping to redesign election control and workflow to achieve greater efficiency and reliability in the county's election system. In this capacity, Mr. Howry worked closely with the county's election commissioner, many supervisors to understand the workflow and legal requirements. As a result of his work, both efficiency and election security were dramatically improved. Mr. Howry is an expert in operations, research, reliable communications, workflow automation, information assurance, cybersecurity, and distributed trust in workflow systems, including but not limited to election systems. Mr. Hari was functioned as a systems architect, designing and consulting in the integrated public alert and warning systems, revisions to the permissive action link to the nuclear command and control network, continuity of government communications, White House communication systems, various information fusion and gathering systems, information warfare, C4ISR, as well as other systems. He has also designed a number of systems capable of securely routing and managing 30 billion workflow objects transactions per hour. Mr. Auer has frequently held top secret clearances with program-related escalations. We are, as our closest elected governing body, we just ask that you please vote aye and approve the resolution for a valid 2024 election. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you can bring. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I did want to let everyone know that because of the Veterans holiday, that the next city council meeting will actually be on the 18th, and because the one after that is also on the week of Thanksgiving. So we're kind of shifting things around in order to make things work for November. So just so everyone knows, that's going to be the next city council meeting on the 18th.
Madam Mayor, I also just wanted to thank all of our first responders. I think today is National First Responders Day, and we've got tremendous first responders here with police and fire, and
Absolutely.
wanted to thank them for their service, their continued service to our community.
Yes, I think we all thank our first
Yes.
responders. So thank you for bringing that up. Are there any other items for public comment? Okay. Moving on to council business, we have item number 5, which is the Pioneer Programs Overview, which is Paige Garcia. Come on up.
Thank you and good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. I am, as mentioned, Paige Garcia, the Program Manager for Pioneer Community Energy. And I'm just here to give you a quick update on our program efforts and also give you some exciting news about one we're really have been looking forward to. If I just go ahead and tell you to, oh, is this the button here? Okay. Got it. I was going to click the up one. All right, so a quick reminder about who Pioneer Community Energy is. We are a community-owned, not-for-profit provider of electricity. Our main goals are to provide stable and competitive rates and a choice in energy options. We have served more than 170,000 customers across 10 local government territories, including Auburn, and our board of directors are made up of elected officials from each of these participating communities. So shout out to our amazing board chair, Alice Allen Caviro. Thank you for having us. And to go over this, one of the other great benefits about having, we're called a community choice aggregator, is, we can really make programs and additional benefits that are specific to our territory. Our programs are created by the community for the community. We have a bi-monthly community advisory committee that reviews any program we might want to launch before it goes to our board for approval. I will also give a shout out to our member from Auburn because I ran into him in the parking lot, Glenn Kramer. So thank you for all your support on our community advisory committee as well. And with that, just some quick programs we have launched. This is the first year Pioneer has done any programs. And within that first year, we have launched 5 residential focused programs. Going through them quickly, we have an online marketplace which supports our customers who are looking for solar, battery storage, heat pump water heaters, or other electrification efforts. This gives them the tool to find local contractors and bids all in one place instead of having to call several different companies. Also supporting some customer saving efforts, we launched a subsidized LED lighting and other energy saving products that work with local hardware stores and retail partners to provide these discounted products in their stores. So like a pack of 4 light bulbs is like $1 there. So it's supporting some energy saving efforts in our customers' homes. We also have an HVAC tune-up rebate that was open from April through September. Any customer that received a tune-up on their air conditioning got a incentive of up to $75 for their efforts to make sure their systems are running smoothly, which also saves you money on your bills. The next one we have is called Power Shift Rewards. If any of you participate in PG&E's Power Savers, this is very similar, but this is a program where customers receive incentives if they reduce their energy consumption during called events. So Pioneer can call one if we see the grid is going to be stressed or there's going to be higher prices. We can let customers know, reduce your load during these times, and they get about $2 per kilowatt hour that they save. And they get it in the form of a MasterCard. So it's just a little bit of extra money if they reduce their load. And then the main one I'm here for is called GridGen. This is a $0 upfront solar plus storage battery program that we are partnering with Tesla on. And I will go into it in a little bit more detail. It can get a little confusing, so feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. Otherwise, I'll leave time at the end. So GridGen, as mentioned, is a solar plus storage battery program. We partner with Tesla, who is the manufacturer of the solar and then their Powerwall 3. We also have a program fund partner called Participate Energy. We launched this program in 3 phases. Auburn was in the first phase that launched in August. And then as of last Thursday, we finished all phase launches. And so our entire territory is now available to take advantage of the program. And the whole point of this program is to get these solar plus storage systems all across our territory to support our customers' needs, in power outages, to protect them from peak load pricing. And sorry, I should have gone to this one actually, because that will walk through. For those of us that don't breathe energy 24/7, 7 days a week, this is just a quick overview of how it works in general, and then how it works with solar, and then how it works in the GridGen program. So what Pioneer Community Energy does in kind of partnership with PG&E is we are the ones that find the source of the energy. So there's kind of 2 parts of your PG&E bill. There's where the electricity comes from, and then the delivering of the electricity to your home. So Pioneer Net is the one that goes out and sources the electricity from, solar plants, hydro, biomass, nuclear, any options from generators that are connected to the CAISO grid. For homes that do not have solar, the energy flows through, Pioneer buys it, PG&E delivers it, the customer receives it at their home. If you have a solar array on your house, the solar produces your power throughout the day, and then it's sent back to the grid in excess. If you need additional, you still pull from the grid, and Pioneer is the one that provides that electricity to you. Customers in the GridGen program, it is a behind the meter system. So you have the solar array, you have the battery Powerwall attached to the home. The solar produces energy during the day, and because most of us are usually at work, that excess solar production is stored in the battery. And then you're pulling less from the grid, and then if you have excess, is pushed back. So you can see kind of the yellow lines going back and forth to the houses show kind of how the energy flows to and from. Then if we go into this kind of peak demand time, which is usually about the 4 to 9 hour, that's when everybody's coming home. There's less solar on the grid, so this is why we have those peak pricing, is because there's more demand and there's less sources for electricity. So if, again, you're a home without solar, it goes the same, you're just paying a little bit more. You still get all of your energy from Pioneer, it's delivered to your home through PG&E, and that process is the same. We're now also adding solar customers that do not have a battery into this equation, where their solar is no longer producing. So therefore they have to pull energy from the grid and then pay those increased prices. In the GridGen program, you have that solar array and that battery. And now, because that battery was charged during the day when you had that excess solar production on your house, you're pulling from the battery instead of pulling from the grid. And that is kind of one of the big perks of this program, is we are protecting our customers from those higher energy prices. So instead of paying for higher electricity and paying higher delivery demands, you are just pulling from your battery system. And then again, if your home does need a little bit more, you're still connected to the grid, so you can still pull, but again, it's decreasing the demand that you might need without this system. And then one big part of this program is, as we are all aware, we are a pretty, we have a higher we have a higher amount of PSPS events than some other territories. So having battery backups or generators is really important in our communities. In the Grid Gen program, again, because this system is behind the meter, when the grid goes down and the power goes out, customers can still power essential load in their homes. So as you can see, there's no arrows pointing on this one because homes without solar cannot get from anything from the grid. Homes with solar that do not have battery backup cannot pull anything from the grid or use their solar array to power their homes. But homes with the Grid Gen systems are still able to power essential load. So you can still run refrigerators, medical equipment, probably some lighting. You most likely cannot pump your AC at full blast, but you can make it through the evening if needed. And if it is a multiple day event, the solar can still charge the battery the next day and then continue to hold that essential load until the power is turned back on. So along with all those grid resiliency benefits, there's a lot of other things that are great about this program. Again, that increases access to solar and batteries for customers who may not have been able to without this program, because there's no upfront cost, there's no credit checks, there's no underscore writing. The trick is the power purchase agreement, or the PPA, is between Pioneer and our program partner or program fund, Participate Energy. So the PPA is between us and not between the customer and Tesla. So that makes it an easier transition if you sell your home. If a customer chooses to not participate anymore, there's not a whole bunch of back-end issues or legal fees or reviews because, again, the PPA is on our side. It is a long-term pricing, so it's a 25-year term with a 1.9% escalator, which is a lot lower than most other lease agreements on the market. There's no operational or maintenance costs because the system is owned by Participate Energy. They pay for all of the maintenance or if there's any updates needed to the system. It's also a non-exclusive program, so customers aren't required to sign up, but again, it's just another option for those who would like to get this type of system on their home and couldn't without it. And I'll go through this really fast because this is getting a little technical, but this is just an example of kind of an average home in Pioneer territory. If you're not on the program, Pioneer is procuring and selling your total annual usage. For this example, it's 7,800 kilowatt hours. So Pioneer procures the energy, PG&E delivers it. The customer is paying for the energy from Pioneer and the delivery from PG&E. And to break it down, so hopefully it makes a little bit more sense later, about 33% of the bill is usually from Pioneer, and then the majority of it is the delivery charges from PG&E. Now, for a home that's on the Grid Gen program, the same amount of electricity is being used in that home, but instead it's being produced at the home. And so therefore they're not paying those high PG&E prices. So even though they're still paying on a Pioneer bill, they're not paying those excess prices. So for year one saving, this example is about $201. This just breaks it out into a couple other options. You have that middle home again, where year one, because again, they're producing and using their own electricity, it's saving them from additional rising costs. That 3%, 5%, and 7% are just some examples of what we've seen PG&E's rate increases go. So if it increases more, the savings become exponential. And if you use more, you save more in this type of program. You can see if you're a little bit of a less user, this is again why it's just an option for customers, because if you use a little less, it might not make sense for you to pay into this system, again, if it doesn't pencil out. And this is something we walk all customers through if they are looking into this program. And then this is just a quick program process. I will go through it for the customer side, again, because we like to streamline how this is. I don't know if anybody here has a leased solar system, but there's usually that PPA. So you have a PPA you have to pay for your system on, and then you have your regular billing. This program combines it all into one, where a customer is interested in the system. They work directly with Tesla to design and build their system, and then they pay for the system on their Pioneer bill. So we're getting rid of that extra bill you have to worry about paying every month, and it's all packaged into one bill. what makes it easier that way is on the backside, we have Tesla, Participate Energy, and Pioneer all working together, where Tesla puts the system on the customer's home. Participate Energy buys that system, so they are the owner of the system, and then Participate Energy and Pioneer have that PPA together, where Pioneer then pays Participate for the wholesale power that is produced through the homes in the program. And again, that's a little convoluted, so if you have questions, I also have FAQs and all that to walk you through if you get really into it. And then on the Auburn side, as I mentioned, you guys were in the first territory to launch. These are actually outdated numbers from when I
Oh,
prepped this presentation a couple weeks ago. As of my most recent reports, we now have 100 leads in the program. 67 of those are active, so you can drop from being an act to being just a regular lead if a customer, because there's no down payment, customers will go through the process to see what it might look like, and then you can see a pretty high dropout for these types of programs. But that's why there's kind of about a half and half, because some will just decide right then and there to not move forward. But and then there's 12 of those customers are from Auburn. So even the past 2 weeks, we've had a few more in this area be interested. And I did check the other cities and counties involved, and you guys are tied for first with the most participants. So that
who's
is
the
really,
other jurisdiction?
Lincoln is the other one.
Lincoln.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So a little friendly competition if you guys
Yeah,
want.
we have less population by far, so that's.
Yeah, it's a really great area for solar and storage. So this program has also been run in a couple other of CCA territories. So I always like to mention that this is some of the highest interest they've seen, even if we are kind of a smaller jurisdiction across interest, and our retention rate for these customers is pretty high compared to other CCA programs similar to this. So I think it's a really good example of, we're making sure we're doing programs that fit our communities and what our communities want and need. And because of that, we're not going to stop here. We do have some plans to expand the program into battery-only retrofit. So if you already have a solar system, we will be introducing a retrofit program for you to get a battery to attach that system as well. We'd also like to expand it to commercial and industrial. That does include member agencies as well, and special districts. We would like to look into that in the future. So a lot of plans coming, and as mentioned, it's not a great fit for everybody, but we are looking for strategies to include customers on bill assistance programs to make it pencil out that we can also get these great systems to support them in their battery energy outages and options like that. So with that, I will leave it there, and I appreciate you guys taking the time and listening to our updates.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I was just going to say thank you so much for coming today. I kind of kept the council updated. I mentioned this program, this Grid Gen, but really appreciate more information about these programs that are implemented throughout our region. But this Grid Gen really is a great program for folks that are looking into solar because it has that battery piece to it. So even if you didn't get a permit your application in for NEM 2, 3, whatever, the battery storage makes it worth it. And then there's no requirement for credit rating. I mean, so, and it's seamless transfer. If you were to lease the system and then sell your home, you don't have to worry about the prospective owner having to qualify to take on that loan, which is difficult in a real estate market. They would automatically assume that loan. And
Yep.
so those are just some really great things. And again, this is through Pioneer. So it's not just Solar R Us or what have you, it's trustworthy. So I know personally, we're going to look into this, and very excited about the program expanding to allow those that have existing solar to take advantage of adding battery. Because I keep saying that that's the way solar makes sense, is having that battery. Now, Pioneer also gets a little bit of income back for this because of course that means less customers. If we're all on solar with battery backup, that's less purchasing power. But there is a mechanism to ensure that Pioneer is receiving some revenue so that we are made whole through that as well, because that's important to ensure that we can continue to keep our rates low for our rest of our customers. So that piece is incredibly important and is definitely there as well. So just very excited about this. And, anyone that's interested out there, please contact Pioneer. because it's just a great program, like I said. Solar plus battery, if that makes sense for you.
Any other, you have any council questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very informative presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Council- Okay. I just had, since this is what I've done for a long time.
It's great to see you again.
Good to see you again. I just, this seems very similar to how solar leases worked a while ago, and they didn't really pencil out for the person who actually was in the house. They penciled out really well for the companies that sold the solar and those who own the lease. So I would just be really interested to see if maybe we could get in a, like, an anonymized version of what these reports that are coming back to people that they're deciding not to do them. Because it sounds like it works for some and not for others. And I'm curious as to why it works out and what those financial pieces are that really make people make decisions that it works or doesn't work. I know a lot of people had leases and it didn't work out for them long term in their best interest. So I just would be really curious to actually see what those contracts are looking like and what those estimates are for paybacks. So if that, it would be possible for us to see what is getting sent to customers, with nobody's names, but just like this is what an average customer or an example one with all the personal information taken out, that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah, I do have all the agreements too that customers will see, and a breakdown of there's a kind of a price structure of they pay like a 14 cents per kilowatt hour for the energy produced and then the 1.9 escalator. But I can get that all written out and shared so you guys can kind of have a visual representation. 'Cause
Yeah, I'm just curious.
probably easier to understand than me.
Because yeah, that's kind of the devil with all the solar and
Yeah.
stuff. The devil's always in the details, and so battery never is not really cost effective. You do it because it's good, because you want the backup system. You don't do it because it's cost effective. So I'm just wanting to see how not cost effective it's going to be for customers and how that risk is going to be managed for Pioneer over time.
Yes, absolutely. Can
Thank
do.
you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on. This is a night of presentations. We've got the progress report on the general plan update and annexation options. Oh, wait, we didn't do any public comment on the last item. Is there any public comment on the last item from Pioneer? Yes, sir, go ahead. Yes, please.
Again, my name is Brian Faircloth. I'm speaking on behalf of myself at the moment. And my only question is, where are these wind farms? I drive around a lot around the area, and I'm just kind of curious where these wind farms are. Thank you.
I will say a lot of the wind farms are down in the Bay Area, the ones over the different passes all up and down, they've got different, there's nothing close. We don't have any close wind farms. Most
Okay,
of them are
so
down the Bay.
so basically they're not here.
We don't have,
They're
we have
someplace
solar
else.
a lot here. There's
Right.
geothermal up north. We have a lot of hydro, but most of the wind tends to be closer to the
Okay,
ocean.
thank you.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm totally wrong. Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the progress report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to introduce this item and then I'll turn it over to our consultant, Barry Miller. So the city started the kind of nascent process, the early processes of our general plan update back in winter-ish of last year. Barry's going to go through a update of where we are with the process, and then also lead into a discussion of potential expansion of the city annexation discussion, just to get council sort of thinking about that, not getting super detailed into the weeds on potential like parcels or anything like that, but really sort of high level, but start that conversation with council so we can start moving forward with that. So I'll turn it over to Barry. He's got a PowerPoint to run through here and we can answer questions when they come up. We also have planning staff here, our planner, Tia Klump is here as well.
Thank you, Sean. We're now 1 year into the general plan update, and we thought it would be a good idea to check in with council and give you a progress report. As Sean said, I'm Barry Miller, and I'm the principal of Barry Miller Consulting. So the objectives tonight are to provide a progress update, to talk a little bit about the next steps in the process, which include deciding how and where Auburn may grow in the future, including annexation, and also to provide an opportunity for public comment, which we are trying to do throughout this process at every opportunity we can. Again, this is the consulting team, and I'm on this project with an economist, community engagement firm, an urban design firm, a GIS and mapping firm, an environmental consultant, and a transportation firm. So it's a multidisciplinary team. It's a comprehensive plan, and it covers a lot of different subjects that require specialized expertise in these different topic areas. So this is the general plan one-on-one slide. You've probably seen this before in some of my other presentations. This general plan is a mandatory document that every city and county in California is required to adopt. It's not a new requirement. We've actually had the laws requiring general plans since 1937. Our current general plan was written in the late 1980s and early 90s and adopted in 1993, so it is over 30 years old, and it would benefit the city to have an updated plan. For a number of reasons, you've heard a lot of this before. It's important that the city has a current roadmap for how it's going to grow and develop over time. Using a 30 to 35-year-old plan is not really helpful for the city at this point. Also, there are legal requirements for the plan, and it's important that the city has a legally adequate plan to guide development. It also helps you streamline environmental review if you have a current general plan, because this process includes a full environmental impact report, and projects that are consistent with that EIR will be streamlined in the future through the environmental review process. Particularly important in Auburn is that this sets you up for some fiscally important land use decisions in the future as the city faces some challenging economics and fiscal. So this is really the basis for fiscal strategy. It provides you with economic development policies and helps you become eligible for grants. It's also an opportunity for the community to weigh in on planning issues for the first time in a while. And it gives you local control so that you can dictate what happens in your sphere of influence to a greater extent than, say, Placer County. So there are 8 tasks in the work scope. The first 2 are ongoing tasks that run throughout the project: management and community engagement. We're completed with the reconnaissance and issue identification and the data collection and analysis tasks. We're moving now into alternatives and testing of different options. So this is where the fun begins, and we really start thinking about how and where the city is going to change and grow in the next 25 years, 20 to 25 years. The remaining tasks for 2025 will be to prepare the draft plan and prepare the environmental impact report. We are looking at bringing this draft to the Planning Commission next summer, 2025, and to the council after that. So you'll have an adopted, legally adequate current general plan and EIR by the end of next year. So on the subject of the existing conditions report, I'm not going to go into detail on these topic areas, just to say that there are white papers or technical reports compiled now on all of these topic areas. Some of them are published on the website. Some of them are still in internal draft form and will be finalized and published in the next couple of weeks. The demographics report looks at population and housing trends. The economics report looks at the state of our economy, the job market, the real estate market, and so forth, the fiscal condition of the city. The transportation baseline report is all matters of transportation, including current traffic counts for 40 roadway segments in Auburn and the unincorporated area. Community design looks at the visual qualities of the city, the form of our neighborhoods, the character of our architecture, and so forth. Arts and culture looks at historic resources and the arts in the city. Infrastructure covers water, sewer, storm drainage, energy, schools, parks, and libraries and other public services. We did do noise monitoring as part of this. So during August, there were noise monitors placed at different locations around the city. So we now have a comprehensive profile of noise conditions in Auburn, and that is mapped as well. The land use report, we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And then all of the technical reports that you see in that colored box on the right-hand side correspond to topics in the EIR, the environmental impact report, that we're required to include as part of this process. So these are a little distorted and low resolution, but they're just snapshots of some of the maps in the land use report, which show current land uses in Auburn, current density patterns and lot size patterns, patterns of underutilized land. So where is there a property where the land is worth more than the building that is on the land and so forth. This is based on assessor data and other real estate data, looking at building footprints in the city. There are actually 20 maps. These are just, again, segments of each of the maps. So it's quite a comprehensive inventory and look at conditions in the city. I'm going to take a moment to talk about our community engagement process. We're trying to keep that as robust as possible throughout this 2-year process. The project website, I neglected to put the URL on here. That's a mistake on my part, but it's auburn2045.org. I'll say that again at the end, auburn2045.org. We have an online mapping program where folks can drop a pin, one of those green circles that you see on that map, on the page and tell us what they'd like to see in the future, a challenge, an issue, an opportunity, and folks are populating that map with ideas and thoughts about things like trails and safety and so forth. We've been doing presentations to the stakeholder groups that you see listed in that box on the right, most of the city boards and commissions and some of the civic organizations in the city. We've had a number of workshops. I'm going to walk through those just in a moment. So some of you attended our workshop at the fairgrounds back in February. We had about 70 people who time traveled to the year 2045 and got to be mayor for the day and talk about what their vision was for Auburn. We also did a virtual version of that workshop. We've had 2 pop-up events over the summer. One was a national night out. The other was at September Fest, where we interacted with about 250 people in total, talking about the general plan project and asking folks to share a big idea for Auburn in 2045. And all of this material is on our website, auburn2045.org, along with summary reports of these different meetings. We did a resident survey between February and April, so that was up for about 10 weeks. We had 560 responses to the resident survey, and there is a report summarizing the results of that. That's on the website. These are just samples from the report. 2 questions were asked. One, in a few words, what are Auburn's greatest strengths? You can see the size of the word represents the frequency of the response. What are Auburn's greatest challenges? Again, you can see the size reflects the frequency of the response. There are a lot of other tables and charts and graphs in the survey report that cover all of the other topic areas that were in the report, the survey. We have a focus group that's been meeting monthly to talk through general plan issues. There are 12 members of the focus group. Most of those meetings are virtual. Some are, and we did have one meeting that was in person last month. We've had 8 meetings to date, and some of the things that this group has done has helped us prepare and vet guiding principles for Auburn's future, which are kind of foundational statements of the city's values that underpin the general plan. We've worked with the focus group on the new land use categories, which I have a slide on coming up. Some discussions about land use and transportation, economic development. We just had a meeting on transportation last week, and I've had some interesting conversations. These are the guiding principles. I will probably not leave them on the screen long enough for you to read all of them, but they're in the staff report and in other materials on the website. Each one of these is basically a thread that runs throughout the entire general plan. Coordination with Placer County has been a really important part of this process. As you'll see in one of the upcoming slides, the plan is not just about the city of Auburn. This is a plan for Auburn and the sphere of influence around Auburn, which is quite large. And so we have to coordinate with the county as they're also doing land use planning for the unincorporated North Auburn and Bowman areas, as well as some of the rural residential areas beyond that. One of the first things that we did in this process is to work with city staff on the, I'll call it the challenge to the county's initial proposal to rezone properties throughout the North Auburn sphere of influence to meet the housing assignment that they had been given by the state of California. Their program included rezoning more than 3,000, rezoning land in Auburn for more than 3,000 additional potential housing units. We felt Auburn was being disproportionately impacted by their choices, with about half of all of the housing sites within the Auburn sphere of influence, half of all of the Placer County-wide housing sites in the Auburn sphere. And through the work of staff and the council and Auburn residents in particular, we're able to get that list reduced to only 4 sites with the potential for 222 units, eliminating some of the sites that were most objectionable to residents. We're now having ongoing conversations with the county about their general plan update. They're doing the same thing we are at the county-wide level, and part of their process is updating the Auburn-Bowman Community Plan, which is North Auburn basically, and covers a lot of land that we're also planning for. So that coordination is really critical to outcomes that are logical and that we can all agree on. These are the new general plan land use categories. It's a little bit technical and wonky, but this is basically our vocabulary when we talk about these, these new maps that we're preparing to guide the city's growth. We have synchronized these categories with the county's land use categories so that we're all using the same language and that our map and their map can be coordinated more easily using the same density ranges in our residential categories, using the same floor area ratios, and so forth. So it's really a coordination process. Oops, I think I skipped one. Okay. So I'm going to shift gears for the last part of this presentation just to set the stage for the annexation discussion. You've seen slides in some of these earlier presentations where there's a map of Auburn from 1964 that shows gigantic development all around the city with freeways running, beltways around the city with 60,000 population. The general plans in the past have been very ambitious about the growth of the city. And in fact, growth in Auburn has been, excuse me a second. Growth has been pretty slow since 2000. Our regional Sacramento Area Council of Governments forecasts show relatively slow growth in the city over the next 30 years. Got the numbers here on the slide. Less than 1,000 housing units in the next 30 years in both the city and the unincorporated area, and about 3,800 jobs in the city and unincorporated area. Those are the Regional Council of Governments forecasts for the Auburn planning area. Higher levels of growth would be advantageous to get the fiscal stability that the city is looking for. Previous general plans, even the most recent general plan that you're operating under now, anticipated that the city's population would double between 1993 and now, and it has not doubled. It's increased by about 3,000 residents. So we haven't seen the kind of growth that the previous plans have anticipated. Within the city limits, we've identified various opportunities for growth. These are documented in the land use report. Downtown Old Town is in the process of being rezoned with a form-based code that will allow housing in areas where it's not currently permitted today, where you have to go through a convoluted process to get housing built. It'll be much simpler. Mixed-use development will also be encouraged and incentivized in that downtown Old Town area. Baltimore Ravine, another part of Auburn where historically there have been development opportunities looked at. The city has a plan for that area that would allow 725 housing units. It was adopted about a decade ago. There are sites that were identified in your 2021 housing element that could accommodate about 570 units outside of Baltimore Ravine. Those are mostly small scattered sites. A lot of them aren't on the market, so we don't know how realistic it is that those would develop, but they're there. They're vacant sites that have residential zoning within the city limits. And then the Domes area, which you see in this inset map, which is about 17 acres, and there's active planning happening on this. I think the council's been briefed on plans for that area. There are also a number of sites, large vacant sites within the city limits, and what I'm referring to as the northwest quadrant, west of Highway 49, north of Interstate 80, along Nevada Street primarily, and west of the train station, where there are some opportunities for future development. Some of these are in progress right now. So the framework for annexation, again, this is not a new issue. This is something that Auburn has been looking at for decades. And I'm putting a quote on here from 1992 that says the city council has taken the position that Auburn is one community, not two communities, one inside the city limits and a separate community outside the line. You can see that map on the bottom right. That's actually from the previous general plan. That was looking at annexing everything east to the American River. Not really what was studied a few years ago when there was a follow-up annexation study. There was then a ballot measure put forward in 1994 that would have annexed the entire sphere of influence. I would like to add that Auburn residents, those in the city limits, supported that measure by about 56%. Those who lived in the unincorporated area that would be annexed opposed it by 81%, and so the measure did not pass. There was another effort in 1997 to 2000 looking at potential annexation, a report in 2000 that was envisioning 2020 that proposed annexation, and then from 2015 to 2018, a committee discussion on annexation. That came about in part because looking at the city boundaries and the airport being an incorporated part of the city, but an island separated by unincorporated land, it was really a response to the fact that the city was annexing on request and didn't have a proactive strategy to annex the intervening lands between the airport and the existing city boundary. The report that was prepared over that 3-year period looked at resident concerns about annexation and ways to deal with those concerns. Some of the opposition was really due to concern about higher taxes, higher fees, big government, meaning the city, more restrictive zoning, and the potential loss of county jobs that were related to that area. The report actually included 3 options for annexation. These maps are from that 2018 report, option A, option B, and option C. Won't go into detail about these proposals that took place about 5-6 years ago. One was kind of west of the existing city along Highway 49. One was more east of the city through Bowman and included all the way up to Dry Creek Road. And then the last one was kind of up the center, more residential areas, and then expanding a little bit more on the west, but excluded Bowman also. These were all presented to the council back in 2018 for consideration, along with the other option of not pursuing any of those, which is where you are now. So again, we have an opportunity through the general plan update to revisit the issue to some extent. There's some economies of scale to do this as part of a general plan update because we're doing a full EIR and you have to do environmental review when you're proposing annexation. It's challenging now that we are in 2024 and so much of that intervening area is developed or committed to development. We have been thinking about more what I called surgical approaches, looking at where are the opportunities for the city to have positive revenue impacts from an annexation, as opposed to sort of wide swaths that take in a lot of developed neighborhoods that may be more fiscally challenging for the city. We also have to balance what we're calling a city-centered growth plan that really focuses on making downtown and Old Town the best that they can be with strategies that are more externally oriented, that bring in areas on the perimeter and how those might add up and how we reconcile maybe some competing demands. We think there's a vision for each of those areas that's different, that can be expressed in the general plan, but it's still important to keep balance in this. So again, just for context, this is the planning area. It's the area shaded in green that we're looking at specifically with respect to annexation. Those blue arrows that you see on the map are really kind of the outcome of our focus group discussion as to where it might be logical to pursue annexation. Some interest in looking to the west of the city. There's the Collins Drive annexation that's already occurred, and some development opportunities to the west along Ophir Road. The Highway 49 corridor which continues to have some underutilized property and actually county housing sites now. Northeast along Lincoln Way going out towards Bowman and including Bowman on the Auburn Ravine side as well. And then going north, really trying to connect to the airport. Obviously, there are many other options. These are just the ones we talked about with the focus group. And last slide, I think actually, no, though, there's one more after this where we talk about next steps. But I did want to, before closing, mention that this is not the only planning game in town. There's a lot of planning happening in Auburn right now. You have a downtown form-based code that's moving forward. You've heard about that at some other meetings. The active transportation plan, which is your bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and a traffic safety plan that's happening through grant money that the city received. The DOMES project, which you've heard about, the airport master plan, and then of course the county general plan that's happening at the same time. So there's a lot of coordination that's happening through this. I will assure you we're all working together and closely with staff to make sure that everything is moving in the same direction. So we're looking at, again, bringing the general plan to the Planning Commission by next summer. This is kind of our rough timeline so that we can have this adopted by the end of 2025. The hearings would take place in the summer and fall. That would include a review of the draft environmental impact report, responses to comments, and the final EIR, which would all happen once the draft is published. And that concludes the report. Again, auburn2045.org. If I could type it in right now on the screen, I would. Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you very much for your presentation. Mr. City Manager, are we supposed to have a dialogue about this? Are we?
Yeah, 100%. I think just to kind of set the stage on any questions about the specific presentation and where we're at,
Okay.
setting the stage for any sort of annexation discussion. We've been talking about this a lot internally, frankly, since I started working here and even before, about figuring out a way, as Barry said, about being kind of surgical about what we're doing and trying to figure out a way to connect to the airport, but at the same time, making sure that the properties that we would potentially annex are providing a tax base that we have an increment of growth, right? That we would be able to keep rather than annexing a property that's fully developed, that is already producing some sort of a property tax or sales tax that we would not keep. And so that would be a net loss to the city because we'd be providing services but not receiving any new tax revenue to do that with. So that's sort of been the focus of what we're looking for. There's no way to do that 100% because there's not just 100% vacant land between here and the airport. But trying to connect between the airport and the city limits proper here, at the same time, not building something that's going to detract from and create kind of a like two different Auburns, right? Where you've got the old town, downtown over here and something else up here. So complementary uses that aren't competing is important at the same time. So just to kind of set the stage on the annexation stuff, that's where staff has been looking and talking about.
Okay. Are there any questions about the plan or the presentation that was just provided to us?
I don't have questions about the presentation, but I do have some
Yeah,
talk about the
we
annexation
need to
piece,
talk
but-
about we need to have a dialogue about that. I just wanted to make sure there weren't any questions on the actual
No.
presentation before we. Councilman Amara?
Just in terms of.
It keeps
In
undoing.
terms of time, you said that, I missed the part in the summer, what's going to happen in the summer?
The summer of 2025?
Yes,
Yeah, so the plan will be released by then. And
okay,
so the Planning Commission will hold public hearings on the plan in summer 2025, and they will make a recommendation to the city council to adopt the plan. And then the council will hold its own public hearings after that.
okay, and then just, I understand we're discussing annexation, but is this, so it's something you'll incorporate into the general plan?
Right. It would be a recommendation to pursue the annexation. The annexation would not happen concurrently.
Right.
There's a whole process we would have to go through.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is decide whether or not we want that recommendation?
We would have, in order to do the annexation, it has to be included in the sphere of influence that we select in the general plan. So that other sphere of influence was huge,
Right.
So we may not want that to be what we
Mhm.
plan to annex. So it's what do we want our sphere of influence to look like? And then after it's completed, then we can pursue the annexation of that sphere of influence area.
Okay,
we're-
so
we're-
it's not,
As far as, correct me if
we're
I'm
not,
wrong.
we're not, today it's just
Right.
geographically what we're
Yes,
trying
right.
to
Yeah.
determine. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, and just one point to clarify, LAFCO sets the sphere of influence.
That's right.
So they
Yeah.
set that every 5 years or so, and oftentimes less or less frequently than that. They're going to go through an MSR and might change it as they go through that process in the near term. But this is setting the policy. Does the city want to pursue this?
Mhm.
And it would have to be within your sphere of influence, or you'd have to change it if you wanted to annex something else.
But it's likely that the sphere of influence won't get any smaller. Well, it could, I guess. I mean, LAFCO, who knows what they're going to do? We don't have representation on LAFCO yet, but, you know,
but this would include the environmental piece of it. So if we wanted to change the sphere of influence and make it larger, then we would have to do
Additional.
additional environmental work. So
That's right.
better to go larger than to go too small and then need to do additional environmental work. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's right. So if the city ever did pursue annexation, you'd submit a resolution of application to LAFCO. And in that, you'd be proposing what area to annex. And then you would either rely on the EIR that you're doing for this general plan because it's already analyzed this issue and it's sufficient, or you would do an addendum to this EIR for whatever different circumstances apply to that proposal.
And for cost efficiency, time efficiency, it's much better for us to do it all in one thing rather than spending additional money to do additional environmental analysis.
Especially if we know we
Yeah.
want to do it soon. Because
Right.
if it was way far out, we probably would need to
Yeah.
redo pieces of it. But if we know we want to do it soon, it makes sense.
And as the attorney, as Gary said, the process is, we go through the general plan update process, talk about areas of annexation. MSR, the Municipal Services Review, is done by LAFCO. They know that we are going to be looking for something, and they're basically have us kind of queued up because they haven't done these MSRs for like 30 years or something here. It's been way, way long, much longer than it's supposed to be. So everybody is sort of backlogged. But they know that our general plan should be done around 2025. And so they've put us in the kind of queue for that to make sure that we're not being skipped over or we're holding up anybody else. Everybody's sort of doing something similar.
Okay.
And then the last thing I'll say is, as I said, LAFCO knows that this is coming. There have been a couple discussions with county folks about this, nothing in depth for sure, but I think that LAFCO for sure recognizes the need that we have. I think that the county recognizes the need that we
Mhm.
have, and then it's trying to figure out how to work through all that. That's going to be the issue.
And from what I've understood, LAFCO does not like people to have, or jurisdictions to have islands if
They
possible.
don't like that if possible.
No, they
Yes,
don't like
very
it.
much. And then one more clarification, sorry. Barry talked about, we would be taking this to Planning Commission in summer of 2025, council around that same time. That's dependent on a couple different things. One of the big ones is the environmental impact report.
Yeah.
And when we release that,
If there's a
depending on
challenge.
if there's or if there's a bunch of comments that we receive, because we need to respond to those comments. So
Mhm.
coming from a jurisdiction which recently did that and took like 5 years or something, I don't think that we'll have the same issue here, but just to,
CEQA always adds an interesting element and.
because
you
it's
know,
completely
you
out of our
comment-
control.
You have to respond to all the comments that come in through under CEQA and then, I mean, every single one. And then obviously it can be challenged as well. So, but, so my,
Sorry, Councilwoman Mara, did you have anything else for questions before
Yeah,
we get going?
Thank you. Just one last, then I'm just trying to clarify them. So it sounds like after hearing what I just heard, that we do not want islands and we want to keep it large,
But
the sphere
reasonable.
of- the
Reasonable.
reasonably large.
The
Okay.
sphere of influence, we want to keep
Yes,
large, but
right.
annexation, I don't think is going to be.
We want to keep the sphere of influence on what we think we could possibly annex. We don't want to, go up to Meadow
overreach.
Vista,
Yeah, the idea of the sphere is that the city is eventually going to grow into that area. That's the point of the sphere of influence, right? And to protect the city from being encroached on by other jurisdictions. So Barry talked about the arena, the process for the rezoning and how we were able to push that back from 3,000 something units to only 200 or so, right? Really, frankly, Barry's the one who helped us get that done. And so protecting our sphere through things like that So that way we do have an area where we can grow into that isn't been swallowed up by housing or other commercial development. It's really important. It doesn't seem to me that we've done a very good job of that in the past. And so we're doing that now to make sure that we're protecting the city's interests. But you can't have the size of our sphere now, the current sphere is sort of shocking to me. I don't understand how we got
can't-
that.
We can't annex. I think that's something that we do have to look at. Again, I know LAFCO sets that sphere, but there's no way that we can annex up 49. It's just never going to happen from a cost effective, the county's never going to agree to that. And frankly, the way the laws are set up is that the county doesn't have to negotiate property tax. When you annex property, they can keep that totality. It's up to them if they want to share property tax. So that's a very interesting piece. But what I wonder about is that, with this general plan, and right now we're targeted to adopt it by the end of 2025. That's if we have a smooth CEQA process. I don't know if that means we have to wait until then to really kind of talk about annexation. I know we're going to talk about it very, broadly tonight, but the reality is that annexation is going to be a very complex process that's going to require that we take our time. It is not something that we can push through. You have to have those residents support it. And there is going to have to be a huge educational effort, because there will be opposition, just as there was with regards to certain services that are already provided by the county. And so there is a lot of work that has to be done. And so I want to just be able to start some of these discussions and so forth. And I don't want to have to wait until a year, so I'm wondering how much. Obviously tonight we can talk about the annexation. As far as I'm concerned, I think we need to go up Lincoln Way into Bowman. There's certainly areas that are not developed, as our city manager indicated. You have to have that variety. You can't just get developed properties because it just won't work with regards to tax sharing. Because again, sales tax, we can negotiate that with the county, but there's plenty of spaces that are undeveloped there. And so we see these maps that are on this, and really I need like a big giant map, because I participated in both, the mayor and I are on the task for the committee, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we have been very involved in this process, but I almost need like a giant map to be able to tell exactly. Because when you tell me like streets and things of that nature,
It might be worth talking about doing a workshop in a
yeah.
more less formal manner for us having more of this discussion, because I totally agree with the communication piece. I feel like there was a lot of dates about when this has been tried in the past, and I would be curious to know like if the communication actually happened in most of that, because this needs to be a joint effort with us being in lockstep with the county rather than
Yes.
it being viewed as an adversarial thing to the county. And we need to be talking with sheriff, we need to be talking with CAL FIRE, we need to be we need to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
And I
before
don't
we
think
move
that
forward,
those.
and I don't think they did.
No, in 1994, which is the last time this was brought to the electorate. Remember, I came on to council in 1998. And so 94 wasn't that, it was just a short time. And there just was not an aggressive educational program that the city put forth. There wasn't that initial discussion with the sheriff's office. Times were different back then. That was quite that was decades ago, but there was just a lot of fear that was put into residents' minds and things of that nature. And that's what I mean, is that we have to start having these discussions really early on. And there might be some negotiations that we're having to do with services and providers. There's just so many pieces, but for me, and I think my colleagues agree, this is like pivotal for me. In the next 4 years, this is something that I really want to help foster and push through. And it's a high priority, because we have to annex in order for our city to survive, and we cannot fail. And so there's so much work, and so I think a workshop would be healthy. I'd like to do a workshop for the full council. So a publicly noticed town hall, almost, if you will, to really kind of talk about that and to define the areas that we're thinking about on, even if it's on this screen, so big, I need
Yeah.
big, so I can really see me and my glasses, just to really see what we're looking at. And surgically doing annexation, right now we just do it when a property owner comes to us and asks for development. But I really honestly feel we need to do a bigger swath because we don't want to have to go to the electorate more than once.
Yeah.
It's going to cost our voters money. In any election that we do, is it going to cost us money?
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. Yeah, fiscally, we can't really afford it now. So I think it is proper to start discussion. We have been, it's been a focus when I was the mayor. It's been a focus when you're the mayor. So we've been discussing this. But I think it's appropriate to take it slow and have a lot of input. And it is going to take a lot of negotiations. And the more we can do, I think fiscally, that'll help us. In terms of the negotiations in the end. So
And it's sort of like, I've talked about this like baking a cake analogy, right? Like we can't just put frosting on an empty shell. You have to have the batter mixed and all, right? And so we haven't really talked about, at least in a public setting that I know of, since I've been here, about what do you want to do for like potential annexation areas, right? This is the first step to get there.
Mhm.
So this is like, putting the eggs in, and then we still have to mix the batter by getting the general plan done. We got to bake it. We got to go through the MSR. We have to do all this stuff before we can get to the next step of doing the actual annexation. But we have to start tonight to at least start talking about it.
And-
I think that doing something like a town hall or workshop, whatever that is, I think that's a great way to do it because it's
Yeah.
not exactly, when you get public
so
comment.
I guess
it's not
my
back
question
and
is,
forth.
you don't want to hold up the general plan though. What is the,
No,
you're
that's-
coming,
Happen in tandem. It
Yeah,
can happen in tandem.
I think that the direction, if there's any specific areas that council wants us to not even like talk about, then
Yeah.
that'd be good. Or do you want to do, as big as possible, as small as possible? Those are the kind of big picture things. We don't want to get like parcel by parcel tonight
No.
for sure. There's no reason to do that.
I like that approach.
So the
actually.
good thing is the sphere of influence doesn't have to be what we annex exactly.
You're right.
So we
No.
can create
Right.
in the general plan, a sphere of influence that generally has the areas that we think we might want to annex. And then when we want to annex, we're more surgical and exact about those places. And then we would communicate
Yeah.
about that
And
exact.
I think that'll make more interest too.
But I think that, in reality, again, that Highway 49 corridor and the DeWitt Center is just going to be a no-go. It is, in all honesty, knowing what the county receives in revenue there, we need the county. The county has got to be supportive. And so we also, we need to be realistic with them as well and know that if, sure, you can annex 49, but guess what? You're going to get 2%.
So the one thing that I was talking with the previous city manager was about going up to Luther Road because we already go up to Dairy on Luther Road at Dairy area. And so it makes it kind of a weird finger that kind of goes up. So that far up 49 hasn't really been redeveloped and turned into what further up 49 has. So I feel like there's an opportunity to maybe go a little bit up 49 to make it so our boundaries make a little bit more sense and maybe there's more
Maybe on the right-hand side versus the left-hand side, because 49 up on the left-hand side going up is pretty developed. From our city limits, where the Toyota dealership is, all the way up on the left is pretty developed.
It's developed, but it's
But we don't
really
have the
old and-
Toyota dealership.
Nope,
No.
we don't. But
Well,
that's kind of.
we'd be asked, and they would get the revenue.
Yeah.
But
the-
Luther, between those has some older buildings that I don't know if they are at the value that they should be. So I think it's just worth looking at 49
Yeah,
to see.
but I'm just
what's
saying like the
possible.
left-hand side, like I said, because they've got the car dealership and there are some bigger businesses on that side. And what I don't want to do is I want to get their support. And so I don't want to aggravate and annoy so that we don't have that support because we need three votes.
On the other hand, I hear what you're saying. It kind of makes sense to go to Luther because then you have a way to connect. If you just go to where we are, then you have, that's goes into the county right away. If you go to Luther, you can go down and around and you connect the whole Bowman area.
I just think it's worth
Again,
looking
if we
at.
look at the right-hand side, and I think that if it's in the general plan as such, that's fine, because again, it's better to have a broader, take that broader swath. But like I said, to me, my focus really is on that other corridor, and I think that we can get the support. We don't know what the makeup of the Board of Supervisors is going to be And, for another week and a half. But
Maybe longer.
I've had some discussions with the supervisors, a couple of them, and, so in any event, I think, moving forward, we set this workshop up or this town hall meeting. Certainly you understand where we're going, that this is something that we are very much interested in. And so it's not going to impact negatively your process.
So maybe we should have all of us go through and talk about what
Mhm.
our priorities are for the general plan, the larger swath, not necessarily the strategic part that we're going to do with the actual annexation. Since Councilman Sarah Sammons hasn't said
Yeah, you haven't had
anything yet, I
we've
wanted to make sure
dominated
that
the
we.
conversation
Yes,
over
you
here.
do.
It's way over there.
Well, I love the idea of having the town hall because I've been here in this city long enough to know and working in the county for the past 26 years. So I've been privy to a lot of these annexation conversations. And I would agree that on that left-hand side, I wouldn't even bother. Let's just not waste our time with that. But to that end, though, if there are sections of Luther that we can look at, because there are some undeveloped areas, let's do that. In my case, I would rather see something more on, and I wish we had those slides up there. You said that big map would help, because well, like for all of us to see though.
Yeah.
The one with the arrows, maybe?
Yeah, like, the one with the arrow. I think that's the best one.
It's almost the last slide.
Yeah.
There you go.
There-
Right, okay. So the arrows were what we're trying to think about. The focus group is the focus group, not us. So I'm thinking more like building so that we are contiguous all the way up to the airport. That's what I would like to see. Because that seems to be the area in the path that makes it's a little bit more ripe for development, but again, having some businesses and existing residents, my interactions, now it's not all that area, but at least enough to know that they would want to listen to options. On the other hand, we've also seen what happens when there's this fear. We had this council room full of people that really had no idea what was going on and thinking that with form-based code that all of a sudden we were going to have Walmarts on every corner, and that wasn't the case. So I think to Alice's point, really, not only do we have this town hall, but really focus on working with our constituents within this sphere of influence to let them know this is what it is. Annexation is a hugely complex process, even for us that have a little bit familiar with the process. When you have folks that all of a sudden they're thinking, oh my goodness, the city's going to swallow us up and we're not going to have any services, or they're going to be reduced in my taxes. I think it's a good point to really think about that communication piece, no matter which direction we go, because everyone still has that same, I don't want to just say flat out fear, but if they don't know, usually fear comes through because you just don't know. And so we need to let these people know. That's just my take.
Thank you. Councilwoman Dowden Cavia, do you want to say what your thoughts are?
Well, as I mentioned, for me, really, it's that Lincoln Way up to Bowman, and if there's a way to connect to the airport as well. I mean, I just think that, and I'm willing to look at some other areas too, but that, to me, really, that corridor makes a lot of sense, given that it's I-80 front property. There's not a lot that's been developed. We know that those residents already are on alert with the RENA and the zoning from the county. So I think that it's very ripe and something that's absolutely possible. So that's really the area that I would like to focus. I know that there's an opportunity to past Mount Vernon, but a lot of those folks out there on Mount Vernon enjoy their ruralness, if you will. They have property and so forth. But to me, the highest priority is that going up towards Bowman, in that area there, and then connecting if there's a way to get to that airport. And so that we have the ability to then look at some potential expansion of our airport, obviously around the airport would be great too, not just to it. So that to me would be my highest priority.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Amar?
Yes, my highest priority is Bowman. period. And then how you connect from there is my question. I mean, I don't know, did the focus group look at that? Do you go Bell Road over?
That's where we might need to be strategic.
That's why we have to be. strategic.
Once we
We
fix
didn't
the
get into that
actual
level
problem.
of detail at the.
Oh, you don't need that level. Okay.
No.
Right.
Okay. So yes, my focus then is Bell Road, connecting to the airport. And I think it makes sense to go up to Luther Road.
Okay.
And also, again, keeping in mind that you don't want to have Auburn, I think our city manager said it well, be two different areas. You want some continuity, you want some fluidity, you want to have it all be our town. And that's why I think even Mount Vernon Road, I mean, I hear what you're saying. That's, you know, that's questionable. Although they do come to city council meetings when they have issues, and we have annexed Collins Way. So, you know, again, I'd have to see a level of detail there. But I have no interest in going further up 49 and the government center in those pieces of property.
Yeah, I don't
I-
have an interest in that either.
Yeah.
So.
I think we're all in agreement that the area that's been redeveloped up, you know, up 49, that whole area, once you get to like where Bel Air and beyond is, that's all, and Home Depot, all of that is not going to be financially cost effective for us. So I think we're all on the same page there. I also agree that trying to get up towards Bowman, I don't know if all of Bowman makes sense or not. But I think that makes sense to look at that side because there is some green space and some, the reason why I like Luther is because when you cut over, you have some industrial space over there. You have some underdeveloped or not developed spaces over there. You have kind of like all the fun stuff when you go up Auburn Ravine that used to be kind of fun when we were kids, but it hasn't been, you know, where Denny's burned down and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I feel like there's areas of opportunity to do some redevelopment in some of those spaces that's not right now. So that's why I kind of like that area. I also am looking at, I know you said nothing on the left side of 49, but behind those businesses is a lot of green space. And so I want to look at the areas where there's green space that's close by that might be an opportunity to create some revenue. So I would be interested in just kind of making enough space around the edges that it makes that we could possibly incorporate a little bit more green space that is not developed at all, that we wouldn't even have to redevelop. So where are those opportunities? I also am looking down Auburn Folsom. And does that make sense for us to go a little bit further down Auburn Folsom? Does it make sense for us to go a little bit further down Indian Hill? I don't know. Those are the pieces that I feel like.
The Auburn Folsom, because, you know, the thing about Auburn Folsom is that you start to run into, you know, people that have 5, 10, 20 acre parcels. And so that's difficult to annex because you know, it's a person who has a ranch for 20 acres. What does that do for us to annex that? Because
Well, that's what Roseville did, and then they turned them all into housing complexes.
But those are people that live there and that like,
Yeah.
you know, in Roseville, what's happened is you had huge ranches. You had
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of acre ranches.
Yeah.
These are just people who have like a 5 acre ranch and they're not interested, you know, in order to make a development there, you'd have to have a whole bunch of them that are agreement to sell. And
There's just a couple places that have turned into development down there, so I just.
yeah,
don't know if
and
it would make sense.
those were more of single property owners
Okay.
that, you know, like,
And I don't think you'll get commercial there.
yeah,
I
people, you're just going to
people
get,
don't want that.
yeah,
Okay.
I think it would be, you know,
A turn off.
yeah, I think it'd be better to go up this other way because like I said, those ranchettes and people, they aren't really interested. I will tell you, it's interesting because Roseville is doing big annexation expansion
Mhm.
efforts out to Baseline, all the way out to Sutter. I think they're going to look annex it all the way out to Sutter County. So,
Mhm.
but so that they can control what's happening in their
Well,
around
and
their
that,
borders.
and that's really what I know a lot of people talk about not wanting Auburn to grow, but because we haven't annexed and we haven't had control over what's been happening on our borders, it's been growing, but without our control and growing into and doing development that we may not have selected in the different areas that
It's
we.
like another city.
Yeah. So
really- that's-
49 may have not turned into the way that it is had we been in control of it versus the county been in
Yeah,
control of it.
60 years in the 60s and 70s was the time that we should have annexed. And I don't, you know,
Yeah. So
I
I'm
was a
just saying.
kid, so don't blame me.
So annexing something isn't necessarily always just for let's max out development on it, but sometimes it's to protect and control the
It's exactly
development that
right.
happens around you.
Because that's exactly right, is that you control what's happening around your core, which is something, like I said, that Roseville's looking at. And so that's important too. And that's a selling point for folks that live out in some of those areas, is that, you know, you would be under, you know,
We-
5 council members versus 1 person.
And we may be less interested in development in some places than the county would.
That's right.
So, so anyway, so that's, I'm looking for, where does it make the most sense for us to have some areas that haven't been built out? How do we get to the airport? Because we cannot expand the airport unless we annex out there without buying the land, and we're not going to be able to buy the land. So we need to be able to create more space at the airport. There's a lot of interest. It's normally maxed out with the people who are out at the airport. It's a great revenue source for us. So I think number 1 priority for me is getting to the airport, so that way we can increase that revenue source for the city. Number 2 is, how do we find the areas that are either underdeveloped, we could do redevelopment there, or our green space that we can expand to, that would make sense for us to take. Okay, does that give enough direction? Are we kind of close?
I do have one really quick question. Sean, you know, we're doing this hotel feasibility. Is it only looking at the city proper, or is that looking in our sphere as well?
It's only the city proper right now.
Okay.
But we could easily, I mean, I wouldn't want to spend money on expanding it now because it's a little bit farther down. But updating that study to include new areas wouldn't be a big lift for.
It seems like
whatever
it would make more sense to make, you know, maybe amend that a little bit while we're undergoing the study now, rather than a
talk to
new
them, see.
study.
I'll talk
So,
to
I
them,
mean,
see.
maybe even just like, and I'm thinking about the Bowman area. really
Well,
for ho-
yeah, exactly.
For hotels. And so if we can expand that scope, I think that would be smart for us to do.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to spend money on a new study, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
and that would help us in our efforts for annexation as well. So that'd be great.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the point we're at now in this process is we're going to begin to develop the general plan land use map. We've got a map that's 35 years old. And the default is status quo, and we carry everything forward. That's what we're starting with. So at some point, there'll be a color map up there that shows all of the land use designations. And the challenge now for us is, where are we changing that? And I'm framing it in a slightly different way than where are we going to annex, as we have an opportunity to plan for all of this sphere of influence. And this is a time where we can think about what are the options we want to look at with that annexation strategy kind of in the back, because that comes next. But there is kind of, and that's why I'm saying this won't affect our schedule at this point, the way you've framed it, because I'm thinking of it still as, what are the land use strategies that we want to look at for this area, rather than what are the annexation strategies,
But we don't want you to waste time on things we don't have any interest in.
or no control
Or
over.
no control.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
All right.
great. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you. Good discussion.
Is there any public comment on this item? Oh, go ahead.
Again, my name is Brian Faircloth, a resident of Placer County, live in Roseville, California. I'm excited to hear that I could fill out a survey to say what I'd like to see in downtown Auburn. However, being excited is one thing and to do it is another, but I don't believe I'm a stakeholder. I believe that the only stakeholders are the folks in Auburn who will have to put up with it, pay for it or whatever. And I trust that in the survey, that if I were to fill out a survey of what I'd like to see, you know that it's coming from outside of Auburn and you keep track of that, but it's got to be less of a weight than people who are really getting impacted in Auburn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I think we have enough direction that we can move on to the next item. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our FY 24-25 first quarter financial update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Gretchen Johnson here, your Finance Director, to present the first quarter financial update for fiscal year 24-25. So the council approved and adopted the fiscal year 24-25 budget on June 24th of 2024. A brief summary of the budget that was approved. It was about 35 million and comprised of the general fund, sewer fund, airport fund, 13 special revenue funds, and the successor agency trust fund from former redevelopment. So the purpose of the first quarter update and all of our quarterly updates that we're going to start doing is, number one, fiscal transparency. We've committed to be more transparent with our communication about the status of our city budget with the council and with the public. It's also to monitor revenues and expenditures to ensure that items are being posted accurately and we have time to course correct anything that may be off course of where we thought we were going to be when we adopted the budget. It's also a time for budget amendments. If things have happened since June that we need to realign the budget to actual trends, to communicate any concerns that we might have. And quick spoiler alert, at this early point of the year, we don't have any causes for concern with our budget. But again, we did include several one-time revenues in anticipation of what our costs were going to be. And then to prepare for mid-year. Mid-year is traditionally when the city does the lion's share of its budget amendments. It brings forward a year-end projection, and this kind of gets the ball rolling and sets the stage for where we're at this point in time. It's important to note that the city does not close a quarter like it closes a fiscal year. So there can be additional adjustments to these numbers that you're going to see tonight for revenues or expenditures that actually belong in the first quarter. And the first quarter is July through September. So with 25% of the fiscal year completed, and this focuses on the expenditure side of the budget, actual costs within each fund are ranging between 8 and 26%. So that's good. If we assume a straight line projection, which some areas we can't, but a lot of areas we can assume straight line projections, we shouldn't be exceeding 25% of spending our budget at this point. And overall, we're not doing that. So that's a good sign. We have 3 major governmental funds that make up the lion's share of our city budget. The general fund has currently spent 24% of its budget, but this is down 10% from the prior year. And that's due to intentional budget reductions that we've had and holding our vacant positions vacant to get salary savings. The sewer fund is at 25% of budget, up 13% from prior year, but that's highly due to capital projects. They come and go. We're spending more costs on those capital projects this year versus where we were at last year. The airport fund is about 16% of budget, down a little bit from prior year. And again, that's project related. We had our public works staff helping with some projects out at the airport last year, and those projects have been completed and no longer need to be helping out there at this point. And then our 13 special revenue funds. So these are the funds that, other than the road areas, do not have a general fund component. So they have special revenues that have to be in their own unique funds. Gas tax and transportation funds are down quite a bit, 80%, but that is all of the road overlay that we're not doing this year that we did last year. And so that is expected. The transit fund has a little increases for vehicle insurance, and then we've deployed a new software technology for dispatch. In the asset forfeiture fund, which is specific to the police department, that is up about $17,000, and that is for new vehicle leases. 7 vehicles this year, we've started paying for those, and that's a lot of what that fund is for. So that is not anticipated per se, but certainly a normal expense to be seeing in that fund. The closed landfill fund down 300,000, but that's due to timing of contract payments. We're not anticipating that the expenditures in the closed landfill fund are going to result lower than the prior year. So that is just related to timing. And then the facilities and equipment fee fund, revenues for this fund come in from our development impact fees. And last year we were doing some solar project activities that have been completed. And so we're down about 36,000 year over year in that fund. So I did want to note that with 25% of the year completed, we should have about 75%. Wait, I think I skipped something. My apologies. Sticky fingers. Here we are. Okay. So all funds are trending within budget expectations. However, a lot can change as we move toward the mid-year financial update that I mentioned. So we remain cautious with spending and continue on our path to address our forecasted ongoing structural deficit in the general fund. Several one-time annual costs have already been paid, and that does tend to swing the costs earlier in the year because those costs aren't amortized over the entire year. One-time costs can include some capital project costs that I talked about earlier. We've also paid several of our annual software subscriptions that are one-year subscriptions that we pay up front. And then our big workers' compensation and general liability insurance has already been paid, and that's just above $1 million for the year. So I've put this snapshot of part of a financial report that we're going to start including in these quarterly updates for council and the public to see. And so I'll go over real quickly what this example is intended to show. The full versions of these reports are on pages 187 through 192 of your packet. But what these system generated reports are intended to do is one, save staff time, so we're not producing Excel reports to regurgitate information that our system provides. But what it does is, for example, general fund is what you're looking at here. The original total budget is the adopted budget that we had in June. The current total budget will change over time as we do budget adjustments, and that'll be captured there as the total plus budget adjustments. The period activity depends on when the report was run. So for this report, the period activity is specific to the month of September. So it's the fiscal activity that we're most concerned with when we're looking at the quarter, because that will give you the entire quarter, in this case, July through September. And then the variance is the difference between your current budget and the fiscal activity. The percent remaining, of course, is what you still have left to spend of those budgets. So with this example, I did want to spend a little bit of time on it because it is the general fund, but personnel services is at 76% of budget, which is a good indication that we've done well with our labor budgeting costs. Straight line would be right there at that 75% remaining. 76 is certainly within that ballpark of being on track with our personnel costs. The non-personnel services are a little bit lower, and that's because of those one-time expenses that we've already paid. So we're certainly on a good path for non-personnel services, and those includes our contracts and payments to vendors and all of the non-labor costs that are out there. Debt service, again, we have paid a lot of our debt bills, at least half of the year have been paid already. So that's why 72% is remaining. Capital outlay has a lot to do with the capital projects that we have, but there's a credit here that I wanted to point out that we have a negative $38,000 for our year-to-date first quarter expenditure activity. That's specific to our Tyler financial system. So the Tyler financial system purchased a few years ago was pretty substantial. We purchased a lot of modules. We've gone through and evaluated what modules we don't need right now, and we stopped paying for them. So we were issued a pretty nice credit from Tyler for those modules going a few years back, and that's why it's a negative. Normally, you don't see a negative on an expense line item. And then the transfers out, that has to do with setting up unique funds or accounts for two of our committees. That was the SHAC committee and the Arts Commission committee that had been approved previously, but were not yet set up. So that's what that $15,000 is there. So then looking at the revenue side, it's a little bit of a different picture when you see how much revenue we've received in comparison to our expenditures, but that is completely normal at this time of the year. So now through now through December is considered our annual dry period, which means that our revenues are very limited at this time of year. And what that means is we have to draw on our city investments. So we have investments through LAIF, CAMP, and the Placer County Pool. We've already had to pull $3.7 million out of those investments in order to cover our first quarter costs. Again, that's very normal. Every year we have to do this until our major revenues for sales tax and property taxes start generating, which starts happening in December and into January. So then mid-year, as I mentioned, it'll be more substantial of an update. We'll be able to do that year-end projection, reserve adjustments, and a lot more budget adjustments to align the budget with 6 months of revenue and expenditure trending. Tonight, we have two budget adjustments that we're putting forward for your approval. The first one is a budget adjustment to establish our ARPA project budgets. So that's the American Rescue Plan Act funding that the city received in total back in 2021. We received upwards of $3 million. So we've spent down a lot of that already, and we have $1.2 million left in ARPA funds that we need to commit to our projects by December 31st, 24, and that's a federal ARPA requirement. The list of projects remains the same that we have been presenting recently with our budget presentations. So we have projects that include the general plan update, Old Town and Downtown Business District projects, Safe Streets grant match, park preserve improvements, city council technology upgrades, Carnegie Library improvements, and High Street Chamber improvements. So the entire ARPA budget adjustment is on page 181 if you want to take a look at that. But approving this budget amendment would increase the total city budget to 36 million versus 35 million, but we have the revenue. So it's really a very neutral adjustment and something that we need to do so we can protect the revenue that we've already received. The second budget amendment has to do with a process change. This is really a technical budget adjustment, but I wanted to bring it forward for your awareness because it changes the budgeting process a little bit for the city. So historically, much of the general fund revenue has been budgeted in one budget called non-departmental, about $3.2 million worth. And a lot of those revenues are influenced and should be monitored and watched over by the specific departments who can influence them and increase them and take action. And so I've created a budget amendment to pull out all of the non-departmental revenues that apply and put them into the department-specific budgets. And so that's what this budget amendment will do. It does not update any budget. It simply moves 1-to-1 for a impact of 0 to the city budget, but it at least sets the stage. It gets the revenue budgets in the departments so that department heads and staff can start seeing the revenues that they're generating and pay more attention to it.
So I just want to say, I thought that this was already happening. And so when I talked to the city manager about, I was like shocked
Mhm.
that we weren't already doing this. I had just assumed that we were. And I know that I had extensive discussions with previous staff about setting aside separate accounts for SHAC and the Endurance Capital Committee because, and Arts Commission, I thought that Arts Commission already had their own because you have public or private dollars coming into the city. And, I mean, I had a number of meetings. So to find out that it hadn't happened when I was told it had, it was just another level of frustration because so thank you for making this course correction. This is the way that we should have been doing it. And again, I was told that we had set up those separate accounts for SHAC, Endurance, and Art, and that Arts Commission already had theirs set up. So to
Yeah.
find that I don't,
Yes,
please continue.
I hear you.
Did you
It's-
hear?
It just every crevice, there's something more. And,
I mean,
it just really,
for the revenue to go into a non-departmental line item, but it's tied to a department, like just, I don't know.
Well,
The words themselves don't really like me. I
and
don't
when
know.
we talked about the revenue we got from strike work, with the fire department, we always talked about it going back to the fire department. I mean, and we always talked about that because we don't want to fund personnel with it because this is just, one-time monies or what have you. But there was always this focused discussion and then to find out that it wasn't
And-
actually happening.
Well, and there's a lot of times there's like side spreadsheets and random things that people do to keep track of that stuff, but it needs to be tracked in the formal
Right.
budget process.
Yes, and I think that that's what was happening, but it was just like, again, we turn over this stone and there's like a whole nother, plethora of issues. So thank you. I just had to go on the record because.
No, I appreciate that. So these are only the things I bring to you. Imagine what I'm finding, right? It's every
bring
day is
all
a
bugs.
adventure.
Pretty soon we're gonna have the Grand Canyon uncovered, I'm just gonna, and maybe we'll find a pot of gold somewhere. I don't know.
No, but I would like to, it's really a team effort. The committees themselves have brought forward information that have educated me, gone in and researched, and lo and behold, yes, we should be doing these things. So I do want to give thanks to them just for bringing things to our attention because it hasn't been well documented and, but we've made it right. We've gone back in time too and made sure that those, particular the committees, if they were revenues specific to those committees, we've brought them forward and put them where they belong. We haven't lost those.
I think we might have asked this before when we were talking about the fees for the business districts, but are we accounting for those separately and letting them know how much money that they have in those? Because that was an issue that was brought up before that I thought was addressed. and I wasn't
Yes,
sure.
those separate accounts have always been there to my knowledge.
Okay.
Haven't had to create those. And we did create a process, I believe it's quarterly where we let them know what's in their
Okay.
accounts.
So they were more complaining that they couldn't find out how much was
Ah.
in those accounts.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we are to summary and next steps. As I mentioned, there are no observed areas of concern for the first quarter. We're continuing our efforts with the multi-year forecasted deficit. We're targeting February for the mid-year or quarter two financial update, where you'll hear an official year-end projection, update on the general fund deficits, budget adjustments to align revenues and expenditures to actual trend. And then we are currently working feverishly on the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year that ended 23-24. I am saying that we're going to have that done and presented by February, but I think it's going to be sooner. Just working with our new auditors, I don't want to be too over excited to get that faster than it can be done, but we're doing good on that front as well. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilwoman Sears Hammond, since I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. And thank you for starting this quarterly report. That's going to really help us, even though some information doesn't come in, with regards to revenues and things of that nature. I do appreciate the transparency in having this because again, we all learned a lot. And so thank you very much.
I'll
Thank
add
you.
my thanks and just for everyone's general education. Last meeting, we asked to have reductions in labor. Those are not in this, correct? There's still more that's going to come, and that we will we see those in the mid-year, or is that something we won't see until the end of the year, most likely?
I'll just say what's factored into the quarterly update and then pass it over to the city manager. What's factored into this right now are the results of any current frozen positions that are new vacant positions that were not included in that final budget. A handful of those, but other than that, no.
Okay.
And so when you get the mid-year budget update, that will probably continue to reflect where we're at with the frozen positions. We did issue notices to the departments that, and to the units that would be looking at potential cuts, with an effective date of April 4th, I believe it was, first week of April at least,
Okay.
to give us enough time to figure out where we're going to be at the kind of, when we're beginning to present the upcoming budget to council. I do think that we'll probably end up in a situation where we won't have to actually effect those layoff notices, that we'll have attrition happening, and we won't have to actually issue a specific layoff notice to a specific employee. So because we have multiple people who have are in background checks and other stuff who are looking to move to another agency. So.
Thank you.
But the end result of the upcoming budget, when we present the 25-26 budget, is that budget, like I've told you before, the goal is to make sure that that budget is balanced without using any reserves at all, and just going forward with what we have.
And we're anticipating that that labor reduction that we put into place would make us so that our budget
Exactly.
would meet that goal.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good to hear. Okay, are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the city manager's report. Thank you very much, Gretchen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just say like how refreshing it is to have like actual confidence in numbers that are coming to, it's a really nice feeling. Let's see, couple things really quickly. The report obviously is going to be on the website, and it's also in the back of the room for folks if they want to get a copy of that. Lengthy report this time. Just some few highlights. I was able to attend the Auburn Chamber of Commerce strategic planning session this past Friday, to provide perspective on some of the ongoing planning, finance, and economic development issues that the city's been working on. That was really nice to be able to, they invited me to participate, and being able to sit in that meeting with them, and listen to the board of directors and the CEO, Michelle Tuggle. The chamber is obviously a great partner to the city, and I'm really happy to be able to participate in that and provide kind of my perspective and insight on things that are happening and where I think we're going. On the multi-purpose pickleball court, with the elevator contractor nearly wrapped up at School Park Reserve, that pickleball court, multiple purpose court, we've scheduled an official ribbon cutting for the facility. So that'll be held November 18th at 11 a.m. So make sure to come to that. The gymnasium roof is at the Auburn Recreation District, although it's not a direct impact to the city government, and it's not a city facility. The news of that potential failure on the roof of the main Auburn ARD's gymnasium at Recreation Park has really impacted our city residents. I've been in contact with ARD General Manager Cale Muscat, and we've offered to assist in whatever way the city can. I'm not really sure what we could do for assistance, but anything that we can do, we will. And then my understanding is that they have a structural engineer who's looking at that this week to see what's happening with it. They started noticing the roof was sagging a bit, and then it was to the point where it's sagging that they can't open the facility, so that's closed.
It's sagging over
So it's going to be closed until further notice.
Till further, yeah, it's not an easy fix.
I did hear, however, that because we have 2 kids in the basketball league, that they're looking for other options for
Oh, good.
using the school gymnasiums and other things like that to hopefully be able to keep the youth development league open. So they are looking at other ways of being able to continue some of
Yeah.
those programs that are.
Well,
going
and
on.
especially with heading into winter when folks want to be doing something inside to get out of the,
Yeah.
so
The
election
pool,
days.
It'll be tough with the pool too, because the showers and everything that
all
are
attached
attached to the
Oh.
pool.
Yeah. Election days next week, obviously ballots for the November 5th general election were mailed out on October 7th. So if you're a registered voter and you haven't gotten that, call the elections department. The city contracts with the county for our elections. Voters can return the ballots by mail by using one of 31 official ballot drop boxes located throughout the county or in person to the elections office. Our drop box is outside in the parking lot. You can also visit the vote center during the in-person voting period. So that's October 26th to November 5th to use the new sign, scan and go process, which permits voters to check in with election staff and then use a ballot scanner to have your vote by mail ballot counted immediately. So you're included in the first tranche of election results when they come out on election night. And there's an update in here as well from our economic development director, just about different businesses. So the Station Public House is in the process of expansion. They're getting pretty close and on the verge of opening their new indoor space, pending alcoholic beverage control and some final touches to that. There's a couple of pictures in there as well. And then Port Choice, the Port Choice owner, Jordan Minyard, and his wife, Melinda, they continue their efforts to develop the new space remedy supply. So Jordan's been working on that project in the old Mickey Boots building for a little while, but it's coming together pretty nicely. I was in there a couple different times this past week. They've got kind of a hexagonal shaped bar. It's going to have food and coffee roasting and all kinds of stuff. So looking forward to getting that building opened up after it being closed for so long. That's all I got. I can answer questions if you have any specific questions.
Yeah, yes. Is the General Plan Technical Advisory Committee the focus group, or who's on that committee?
I think that's right. Pretty sure that it's the same.
I think so. And the two council members are Rachel and myself that were appointed.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Well, I know,
technical we
but-
are, but.
Did you talked about bicycles and pedestrians?
Oh, yes, we
Yes,
did.
we did. We talked about transportation and Kelly from the Auburn Trails.
Was she
Alliance,
there?
She was talking about it. There were also, there were lots of us. There was lots of conversations about not just what we need for the current growth that we have and to expand what we currently have, but what do we want the future to look like? There's a lot of interest from the community to use more, be more bikeable and walkable. And so how do we integrate that into our plan moving forward? So that was definitely discussed. So
Okay.
you would have been happy with the conversation.
Okay, well, I'd like to know next time when it involves that.
Well, I don't,
You wouldn't be able to
you
go.
wouldn't
There'd
be
be
able
a
to attend
quorum of
because
council.
quorum
Oh,
reasons.
okay.
So it's the two of us, but there were plenty people representing bikes on the call. I will
Yeah.
tell you.
Because I don't like the approach, but anyway.
Otherwise, everything has to be a public meeting, which is very.
Yeah.
Oh, Brown Act.
Yeah.
It's
No,
a
no,
blessing
mean-
and a
I meant
curse.
the approach of the question here, which is how to integrate bicycles into a narrow, hilly streets of Auburn.
That's not how
There's-
it was approached. I will tell
Okay,
you that.
okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
We were looking at all
Sounds
the
kinda-
different.
It sounds a little negative.
Well, I think we also looked for non-street options. It doesn't have to be
Exactly.
along streets. So we
Yeah.
were talking about that too. So I will say you would have been, knowing what we've talked about, you would have been happy with the conversation.
And I know Kelly understands the whole process of bicycles.
So, I do want to apologize. I moved too quickly. We did not get to the, resolution part of item number 7. I guess I was too excited about moving on. So I need to bring us back to item number 7 and ask to, if there's anyone who wants to make a motion on the resolution part of that.
I move,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I move by resolution that we approve the 24-25 budget adjustments to commit remaining ARPA funding of $1,230,555 by December 31st, 2024, increasing the total citywide 24-25 budget to 36 million and some dollars and cents, and relocate existing general fund revenues from the non-departmental budget to the department budgets at a net impact of 0.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Sierra Sammons.
Aye.
And Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, thank you very much. And thank you to staff for reminding me that I missed that. Okay, council reports. Are there any council reports this evening?
Yes, I wanted
Councilman-
to, thank you,
Calvillo.
just very briefly mention, as we had the Pioneer Report already, but for PCTPA, for those that are wondering about the Highway 49 sidewalk gap project, that was actually rebid. $11 million, and we anticipate that it will be completed September 2026. So it is still on the books. It's just that there was a delay. I'm not sure exactly why it had to be rebid, but that was reported out at our last PCTPA meeting under the the executive director's report. And that's all that I'll mention at this time.
I know we have closed session, but sustainability met, and just quickly, City Hall front lawn project, they're meeting with Yamasaki for a site plan. And Joe gave a very nice report on different, he went to Petaluma and looked at what they have there and different ideas for drought resistant plants that would be beautiful and make our front look very nice. Greenhouse gas emissions project, they're working on that. They're trying to get some data for that and working closely with the city manager. Medallions for their storm drains are underway. I don't know if anyone knows, but we had a grant and we had, I think, over 750 medallions that were just sitting. And so the sustainability is going to volunteer with Rotary and the high school to help put the medallions on the storm drains. Because as you know, people, or as you may not know, people are putting oil and different things down storm drains and they're unaware that it's just for water and it pollutes our waterway. So that's an effort that sustainability is going to work on, along with, let's see, Bike Racks is working with Bike Alliance on the bike racks. Everybody's probably seen the progress they were making. And finally, the sustainability is trying to get enough volunteers with the group or whoever so that they can have a presence at farmers market to explain our waste reduction program. And finally, there's an environmental show working up here with Mike and no, not Mike, Phil, excuse me, Phil, but Mike with K-High and Phil. Phil eventually, I think they came up with a fantastic idea. Oh, yeah. Well, in the future. Okay, it's an idea. And it's going to be possibly out in front of the square in downtown Auburn, and having individuals come up and have just, questions that would just spark interest in our city and environment, and keeping Auburn clean and safe and all that.
What is,
So
I'm sorry, it's a what?
it's part of the talk show that we're going, that
The word on the street kind of a thing. it
the word
sounds
on the
like, yeah.
street. Remember, as you were,
Oh, the
as you
radio
knew, they were doing the radio show, so we've expanded it to this.
They're thinking about it.
Yeah.
There's an idea.
It's the idea.
There's an idea.
He's got a
Yeah,
lot of
Phil's gonna
equipment
come
to
down
move,
right
though.
now.
He's not.
Phil will be presenting at
he's
our
not
next
too
meeting
excited
about
about
the
bringing all
idea
his
that he has.
equipment out. But anyway, that's the sustainability.
Thank you.
Couldn't they just do call in? I mean, is the show has, you can do call in.
Well, if you attend the meeting and suggest that you're
I
welcome.
mean, that's like a free thing. I mean, people can call in the radio show and make suggestions, or you can.
And I
have it-
think the idea is just to get the presence and
Mm.
get, be out there among the community. And they do have call-in. They've been on K-High and it's
Yeah.
been very successful.
Mhm.
So we're trying to expand to Auburn TV. And I think that's it. Oh, the high school, they come at every meeting and they volunteer with the shelter. They did the river cleanup. And again, they're participating in a lot of sustainability activities. So pretty exciting.
Councilman Sierra Salmon?
It was noted a little bit in the city manager's report, but the Greater Auburn Area Fire Safe Council, that's a lot. Had a really robust meeting. I was able to attend via Zoom. Just a couple of quick things. I attended my first full class of Leadership Auburn, and part of it was a field trip to see all of our museums. If you haven't had a chance, we don't just have one museum, we actually have several. So it was very interesting to play tourist for the day. The other thing is, gosh, what was I about to say? I should have had this for public comment, so forgive me. But the high school is doing a Dia de los Muertos tomorrow evening. Well, actually from 4 to 8. There are going to be booths that are going to be manned by pretty much every Placer High club. So there'll be coloring, there'll be crafts, there'll be music. It wasn't really advertised that much, so I'm just putting the word out. So the weather should still be fairly nice. So come on and help our Placer High School kids celebrate Dia de los Muertos tomorrow. And that's it.
Before I give my update, I did want to say thank you to our staff in the fire department and PD for coming out to Skyridge's jogathon on Friday. Some watched and some ran along with the kids, and everyone had a good time. So I wanted to say that I appreciate them for coming out. I also wanted to say thank you to Public Works for putting so much notice for Skyridge on the construction that's going on Maidu. We were sent a note just today talking about how there's going to be alternate routes that are going to be needed in order to get up Maidu this week. So if anyone is driving along Maidu, you might need a couple extra minutes for that. And then as far as my reports, we had the first meeting of the Auburn Youth Advisory Commission.
Oh, yeah.
And that went really well. They were super enthusiastic. We had 3 adults and I think it was 9 kids that showed up. We had one that had a flag football game, and I think there might have been one more. There was some interest in seeing if we could get, because most of the kids were from Skyridge and Placer, if there was any interest in getting anyone from E.B. Kane. So we might see if we could open the application up for a week and see if we can get 1 or 2 kids from E.B. Kane. I didn't feel like it was too many kids. They just really felt like that wasn't represented, and it was important to them to make sure that all the schools were represented because there was not 1 student from E.B. Kane. So, so I think it would just had to do with word of mouth and who got to where. And so we're thinking that we might open that up. And so at our next meeting, we might bring back 1 or 2 students from E.B. Kane.
Be careful, you might have a group of 30.
They were all, it was totally manageable. The fact that we had multiple adults there was helpful, and they were all really enthusiastic. So that was really great.
Where did you meet?
We just met here up in room 10.
Oh, room 10.
Yeah. So it was great. it was more of getting to know you, talking about how structure works in a formal meeting, talking about Brown Act and kind of what things are kind of interested in. And then we're going to start working on kind of the scope and what projects they might want to work on. So
Good.
that's where we're moving forward.
Thank
But
you.
they were all very excited to be there. So that was fun. All right. That's all I had. If there's nothing else, then we're going to be adjourning to closed session. Thank you very much.
I'm going to